the charger disconnects, then it dies. So anyway, should have planned ahead, but here I am. Okay.
Hey, Anupama Prabhu, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Co-host. Okay. We're good to go, Prabhu. We're live streaming. Hare Krishna.
Okay. I'll pull up my screen here. Rayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam Devam saraswatim vyasam tojayam udhirayat. (17 to 19). Okay. So a couple verses. I'll just read through the first two, and then on 16, then we can all chant together. Tatro pravishto bhagavan sa ishvaro yogeshwarantar hridi kalpitasana chakasa gopi parishad gatorchitas trilokya lakshmyeka padam vapurdadhat. Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whom the great masters of mystic meditation arrange a seat within their hearts, took his seat in the assembly of gopis. His transcendental body, the exclusive abode of beauty and opulence within the three worlds, shone brilliantly as the gopis worshipped him. Purport: the masters of mystic meditation include Lord Shiva, Ananta Shesh, and other exalted personalities, all of whom keep the Lord seated within the lotus of their hearts. This same Lord, conquered by the intense selfless love of the gopis, agreed to become their boyfriend and dance with them in Vrindavan after sitting upon their fragrant shawls on the bank of the Yamuna River. Sabhajayitva tamananga deepanam sahasa lilekshana vibhrama bhuva samsparshanenanka kritangri hastayo samstutya ishat kupita babhasire. Sri Krishna had awakened romantic desires within the gopis, and they honored him by glancing at him with playful smiles, gesturing amorously with their eyebrows, and massaging his hands and feet as they held them in their laps. Even while worshipping him, however, they felt somewhat angry, and thus they addressed him as follows. Now, today's verse that we'll repeat, you guys can repeat after me. Shri Gopya Uchuhu Bhajato Nu Bhajantyeka Eka Etad Viparyayam No Bhayamscha Bhajantyeka Etan No Bruhi Sadubho. Shri Gopya Uchuhu. The gopis said, Bhajata, to those who respect them, Anu, reciprocally, Bhajanti, show respect, Eke, some, Eke, some, Etat, to this, Viparyayam, the contrary, Naubhayan, with neither, Cha, and, Bhajanti, reciprocate, Eke, some, Etat, this, Na, to us, Bruhi, speak, Sadhu, properly, Bo, O dear one. The gopis said, some people reciprocate the affection only of those who are affectionate toward them, while others show affection even to those who are indifferent or inimical. and yet others will not show affection toward anyone. Dear Krishna, please properly explain this matter to us. Purport. By this apparently polite question, the gopis want to expose Lord Krishna's failure to properly reciprocate their love. They were very disturbed when Sri Krishna left them in the forest, and they wanted to know why he caused them to suffer in these loving affairs. Om Adgyana Tirmanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So obviously a very intimate section of the Bhagavatam, of the 10th canto especially, where we're talking about different forms of love, and here more and more it's being highlighted the super excellent love of the gopis. It's so super excellent, in fact, that they can apparently appear to be dissatisfied by the way Krishna is treating them and even express that in their own way. But in reality, everything they do and everything they say is simply to please Krishna. So this is what we're aspiring after, this mode of full surrender to Krishna in ecstatic love, meaning that every single thought that we think, every single word that we say, every single action that we perform is being done as a means to please Krishna. So what does that look like in a practical sense, though? It's funny because, we talk about devotional service, and we understand that devotional service is the ultimate goal. It's our practice. It's what we're meant to do on a day-to-day basis, moment-to-moment basis. But what it actually looks like, I think, is sometimes elusive. Obviously, there's the 9 primary processes of devotional service, of which hearing and chanting are the foremost. But there's also devotional service that we can perform on a moment-to-moment basis, say when we're brushing our teeth, or washing the dishes, or sweeping the floor, or even being at work, interacting with some random person, at the checkout line or anything like that. So when these 2 forms of devotional service combine properly, then we can become situated, or we can become absorbed in this real kind of bhakti. That's what devotional service ultimately is. And I'll explain it in the sense that when we have really strong hearing and chanting that we're performing on a daily basis, then naturally, when we're standing at the checkout line, we'll be more prone to think of Krishna. And we'll be more prone to view things in such a way that we'll be able to connect them with Krishna. And because of that, we'll have many more opportunities to perform service to Krishna, simply because that's what we're thinking of. We're always thinking of Krishna. So for example, if we have a really good hearing and chanting session one morning, and then we go to wash the dishes, say after breakfast or something like that, then we're much more apt to think, I'm doing this for Krishna. And you might think, well, how could I be washing dishes for Krishna? But in reality, we could do everything for Krishna. Every single thing around us and us ourselves, we're all Krishna's energy. And so everything is meant to be done for Krishna in this mode of devotional service to Krishna. But when we forget that and we think that, oh, how could I do this, in service to Krishna? That's Maya. So the way in which we could do it is very unique according to the time, place, and circumstance, and the personality, the preferences of the given devotee. But for example, for me, Mani and I, we have a system where she often is the one who cooks, and then I'm the one who cleans, at least, the dishes a lot of the time. She also does it a lot of the time as well, but that's at least the system we put in place. So, So it's very easy for me to connect that to Krishna, especially if I'm actually hearing and chanting nicely. But one of the ways is that I could think, well, I know that Krishna likes cleanliness. He says in the Bhagavad Gita that those who are in Sattva Gun are ultimately the closest to him. And we know that cleanliness is a key aspect of Sattva Gun. And so I could think, well, I want to love Krishna and I want to be in his association as much as possible. I want to be actively developing a consciousness that will allow me to serve him more and more and more. And I know that a key component of that endeavor is to maintain a standard of cleanliness. And so I could be washing dishes and thinking, well, this is going to help me get closer to Krishna. I could also think that Mani Mundri is my wife, for those who don't know, is Mani Mundri, and her name's Mani, and she's a devotee. She's very dear to Krishna. And so by washing these dishes and not, putting it on her, then I'm performing service to Krishna's devotee. And no one is more dear to Krishna than one who serves his devotee. It's actually mentioned in one of the Puranas, I forget which one, but my spiritual master always references this, that one who claims to be Krishna's devotee, for one who claims to be Krishna's devotee, his liberation is questionable. He may or may not actually gain liberation, but one who claims to be the devotee of Krishna's devotee, his liberation is guaranteed. And what does that mean? Liberation is not some dry, like business exchange for us. It's actually a matter of pleasing Krishna. When Krishna is pleased with us, then he'll remove all of our anarthas, all of our material desires, and then we'll go back to him, we'll exit the material world. And so by pleasing Krishna's devotee, Krishna becomes pleased with us. And through that pleasure of Krishna, then we get this attachment to him, we become free from material desires, and we can attain liberation. So those are two simple ways in which I, personally can try to connect my just seemingly mundane activities to Krishna. But again, it all starts with that powerful hearing and chanting. It's definitely a fact that the more that we are going deep into our basic practices, the hearing of the Srimad Bhagavatam, of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, Nectar of Devotion, and the more that we go deep into our chanting, by just sincerely trying to chant with a mood of service and surrender to Krishna, then the more apt we'll be to think of Krishna and to be able to have these kind of transformational experiences in which the seemingly mundane becomes actually spiritual. And that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness, is taking the mundane and turning it into something spiritual. Of course, actually nothing is mundane, as I said before. Everything is actually Krishna. It's just a matter of our remembering the fact. And so, I like to make things very practical as much as possible just for myself. But that's the way I think of things. And so to get to the root, if we were to take it kind of step by step, at the end game is to be in this platform of pure devotional service in which we're fully in love with Krishna. And we're always thinking of him, always thinking of how we can better serve him, always thinking of how we can better serve his devotees, and are fully absorbed in love for him. To get to that point, we have to please Krishna. To please Krishna, we have to please the spiritual master. And to please the spiritual master, we have to carry out his instructions in the proper mood and with the proper amount of dedication. So it seems to always kind of come back to that point. But then you could take it even deeper than that. And I was in Vrindavan this past Kartik, and Giriraj Swami was there. He was giving this kind of big class in this hall. And I asked a point to kind of, take it a little bit deeper, this particular point. I asked a question of how, we understand that kind of the root of our development in devotional service is to please the spiritual master. And by pleasing the spiritual master, then we get, to carry out the instructions of the spiritual master. And by carrying out the instructions of the spiritual master, everything else comes. But I said, well, what if we're not feeling inspired to carry out the instructions of the spiritual master? What do we do then? How can we become inspired to carry out the instructions of the spiritual master? And he said that the way you do that is by chanting good japa. That if we could chant good japa, then we'll be more inclined to think of the instructions of the spiritual master and more inspired to carry them out. And so it seems to come down to this one crucial fact, and I don't know if I've ever, gotten it verified, but I do recall hearing, I think it might have been from Champa in one of our conversations, but I heard that Prabhupada said at one point that something like 90, or maybe it was 99% of our spiritual advancement depends on our japa. And it makes sense, if that's the Yuga Dharma, is chanting Hare Krishna. It would make sense why that's kind of the key component of our development. And one quote that I can definitely directly attribute to Prabhupada is someone was asking him, I think it was a letter, how they can chant better japa, or they were saying that it's so difficult. My mind is going everywhere, and how can I sit down and just overcome it? And he said that by two things you can overcome the mind and be able to chant extremely good japa, and then from those two things, from chanting with those two things, and everything else will come. And can anybody guess what those two things were that Prabhupada said? There's two qualities that he mentioned that you should have while chanting. And then through those two qualities, then everything else will come.
Humility.
Humility is a good one.
Enthusiasm.
We got humility, sincerity, attentiveness. Yeah. Enthusiasm is very close. But what if we don't have humility? We could try to chant with humility, but we may not necessarily have it yet. We could try our best. Sincerity is good, but we may not feel so sincere in the moment. We may feel otherwise, but still we could try our best to chant with sincerity.
Regulation and doing it as an offering to Krishna.
Of course, regulation, enthusiasm, those are very close. Devotion
Doing
to
it to
Krishna,
please Krishna. No.
trying to please Krishna. All very good. And the two Prabhupada mentioned are very closely related, especially to attentiveness, enthusiasm, regulation. The two he mentioned were effort and determination, right? Because we may not feel humble, or we may not have that humility yet. We may not feel sincerity, or really feel sincere yet. We may not be able to be attentive, but we can always make a choice to push on, to try and break through all the walls of not having humility, or not having sincerity, or not being able to be attentive. We can always exercise our willpower. That's our key essential possession as jivas, is our willpower. And so we can always make the choice to push through our struggle to try and chant attentive japa. And by making that conscious choice to, instead of giving up, or instead of looking at the phone, or going and doing something else while we're chanting, we can always make that choice to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to sit here and chant as hard as I can for as long as I can. And then I'm going to try again tomorrow. And I have a good buddy, Nanda Kirtan Prabhu, who he was #1 book distributor in the world for a few years running. And I think now he's like #2, which is saying a lot, because there's a lot of devotees out in India, especially, who really go for it. And but he was obviously empowered. And I remember I was talking to him about chanting japa, And he said, this is something that I do sometimes as well. It's funny that he said it. He said sometimes when he's chanting japa, he thinks of this Doors song, the Doors, Jim Morrison, that it goes break on through to the other side. But it doesn't just, yeah, Damodar Priya knows what I'm talking about. It doesn't just say break on through the other side. It's like a really intense kind of call to action. Oh, and Nanda Mundry too. Yeah, me as well. Big classic rock guy. But that's what that's his main. That's like most is basically the entirety of the song. The verses are just kind of like little filler things, a couple of words. But the real crux of the song is this howl, this kind of screaming call to action to break on through to the other side. And he told me that that's what comes in his head sometimes when he's chanting his japa. And I thought that was really powerful because, yeah, we may not always feel up to it. We may not always feel that connection, that closeness when we sit down to chant our japa. But no matter what, we can always give our all to try and break through to the other side, even if we stink, even if, we just can't get it. And no matter how hard we try, we still keep, drifting off and thinking about, this or that. We can always try our best to just keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, keep trying to break through to the other side. And the reason I'm harping on this point is because that, again, that's in terms of the step-by-step process, this is where it all begins, is with this japa and this effort and determination. No matter all of our anarthas are holding us back and we're having a hard time just trying to sit there and just hear the mantra, we're struggling in our spiritual life, we're doing this or that, whatever it might be, no matter our situation, where we are in our spiritual life, how we're feeling, if we're feeling close to Krishna, if we're feeling far to Krishna, no matter what, our lifeline is always our japa beads and this willpower to just sit down and try our best to chant. And it's guaranteed that by doing that, Prabhupada says, it's guaranteed by doing that, and everything else will come. Just like a baby, maybe trying to walk and falling down so many times, but by this intense endeavor, by this intense willpower to just keep trying, even if it's just for one round a day, that we're able to really give our all. By that endeavor, and everything else will come. That's our lifeline. That there was the Malaysian flight that got lost. I think they just made a documentary about it. And what happened was the transponder turned off somehow or other. The kind of beeping GPS system that all flights have, it turned off on this Malaysian flight. And so it completely disappeared. It presumably crashed somewhere in the ocean or maybe, some kind of island or something. But because that transponder was off, it was never recovered. It's never been found since then. And so that's how we can feel like sometimes in the material world, that we've kind of lost our transponder and we're just lost somewhere in this ocean, on this island, and nobody can find us. But our transponder is our japa beads in the mantra. And as long as we have them, then no matter how lost we get for how long, if we can somehow or other click that button and click our fingers to the beads and really chant with intensity. And even if we're stranded in the middle of the greatest ocean, which in some ways we are, then we can be found by Krishna. Krishna can lift us up out of the ocean and carry us back to the spiritual world by the mercy of our spiritual masters. So we'll stop there and see if there's any questions or comments. Thank you. Adi Purush Prabhu, please.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's such a wonderful class, very important point you're making about offering everything to Krishna, washing the dishes or sweeping the floor. And one of the interesting guidelines, instructions Srila Prabhupada offered us is, we don't think this is my apartment, this is my house. The deity is installed in every devotee's house, every apartment. We've seen even in third world countries like Mexico, where they have a little tiny hut, but there's an alcove with the Madonna, with Mary, or in Taiwan and Korea and places we've been doing Sankirtan. Every house has the deity of Buddha, you know. So if we install the deity, we invite Krishna to be there, and then we say, Lord, this is your house. I'm sweeping your floor, I'm cooking your breakfast, I'm cleaning your dishes, right? So what we're doing is not a service for our own maintenance and happiness, although it's beneficial to be clean and everything for our own consciousness. It's an offering to the Lord. And so the deity worship is essential for a householder who has the tendency to think this is mine. So the austerity is to shift the consciousness to who I'm doing it for, and whose house, whose dishes, whose lunch, whatever. And then it's very natural to do it with lots of love, to do it as nice as possible. And it helps us remember Krishna.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree completely. I've definitely. Oh, do you have something more, Prabhu? Okay. Yeah, I agree so much. And yeah, Prabhupada did say that householders should have deities, and I've definitely realized that we have Gaudi Tai here, and I feel like they're the focal point of my spiritual life, 100%. Just to be able to come home to them and worship them, chant in front of them, offer them their boga, no matter what happens in my day or what's happening in my life. Whenever I'm in front of them and doing some service, especially directly to them, I feel uh, safe and cared for, protected. So that's a really special thing to have. So yeah, if there are any householders here without deities, Prabhupada did say that every householder should have a deity to worship. And otherwise, I think he said otherwise the house will become Maya or something like that. If there's not the deities. And that speaks to what you're saying, Adi Prabhu, that without that consciousness of this is the deity's house, then we think, oh, it's my house, and these are my things for my enjoyment.
Recently, Judge Jagannath gave a really nice class here about the austerities of the householder ashram. And he mentioned worship, sadhana. He mentioned to give a donation. The householders must give in charity. And he said also householders must, by one means or another, either by having children or by maintaining a preaching center, care for souls like children, bring them into the world and raise them in Krishna consciousness. I know we just had a recently visit from household couple of Brahma Bhutta and Mother Vani, and they've always maintained a little preaching center, and they're always like nourishing new devotees, as though they don't have children themselves. They're like that taken care of. And one of the interesting austerities listed in the scripture for a householder is to receive a guest. And Vaisheshekha was reading to us recently where he said, if a householder does not receive a guest, he's an animal. I'm like, whoa, that's so intense. Receive a guest, Sometimes we don't even have an extra seat at the table, much less let somebody stay with us. But Prabhupada tells us that his father, every night there would be serving dinner and he would have guests. So to receive a guest, because the tendency is to think this is my house, but we are hospitality geared and welcoming and including and caring for and allowing someone else in the door. And sometimes in the wealth we lock the door and we put out the guard dog, and this is protected because this place is for my privacy and for my enjoyment, and no one else will come here except me and my family. But that's kind of a pitfall we can fall into. Maybe I'm talking too much. Oh, glory to Srila Prabhupada, just trying to repeat what we heard.
Thank you, Adi. Anybody else? Damodar Priya.
I think Ananda Manjari had her hand up first.
No, it was you. Please go ahead.
Okay. I was just wondering, there was recently a conversation that I saw where somebody was mentioning about having specific deities in the home and how that can be different. And and they were talking about Shaligram Shilas. And I was just wondering if you know anything about that, if there's anything that you can elaborate on it, just in terms of the misunderstanding. Somebody was saying like that householders are not supposed to have Shaligram Shilas, and that they should only be in temples. And I think that's outside of our tradition. So I was just wondering if you could if you know of anything or if anybody else does. Thank you.
It's definitely within our tradition because Advaita Acharya was worshiping Shalagram when Lord Chaitanya came down. But yeah, no, I've definitely heard different opinions. I think typically the solution is to go with your spiritual master and whatever his view is. Prabhupada says in the letter that householders can worship Shila. I remember reading, or it might have even been a purport. I should be better with that. But definitely our Ishtadevs are Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, and so they're meant to be worshipped as kind of the primary deities as part of our line. But then other deities besides them, I'm not so well versed, but my general understanding is that we should go according to our spiritual master and what he or she recommends.
Thank you. But that's good to know that Advaita Prabhu, he had a Shaligram at home and it is part of the tradition. And I had heard that if your spiritual master gives you permission, then that is something that you can do in terms of a worship at home. So thank you for saying that. And then Ananda Manjari Prabhu?
Yes, Hare Krishna. I want to add to the Shalagram Shila that simply, householder life has different engagements. And so especially thinking about like having children, which technically the ashram is meant for, it's like the worship of Shalagram Shilas is very high. And if you're not following the standards, the reactions are also strong. And so that's also why it's not recommended for grihastas, just because like naturally there are other engagements that may come in the way of worshipping Shila properly. But I wanted to just make a comment and add to your beautiful point of chanting the holy name. And I was hearing a lecture of His Holiness Radhanath Swami yesterday, and he did mention that actually 99% is our japa. And he also mentioned how Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would, and also Srila Prabhupada did the same, that they would count the numbers of the mantra or the name of Krishna mentioned in articles to essentially judge them or to see how potent they are. And so there was even a situation when there were two articles, and one was actually animical towards devotees, and the other one was very favorable. But in the animical one, the name of Krishna was mentioned more times. And so he actually said that this article is much better and much more potent because the name of Krishna is so purifying that just to read his name is taking away so many simple reactions, and it's the best thing that could ever happen to anybody, and that really shows the potency of the holy name. And then there was His Holiness Radhanath Swami was making this point about how we are to show up to our sadhana, and one of the ways was that the moment we wake up in the morning, we are truly telling ourselves and believing, I have only 24 hours. Within the next 24 hours, I can die and I will die. And what am I going to do about this? And when we truly believe in this, like when we truly show up with this consciousness, then naturally our focus goes towards the holy name, and naturally we don't want to blaspheme the devotees or anybody else. We don't want to waste our time because we are truly believing. I only have 24 hours, which honestly can be true, and that actually is our blessing, because the more we can focus on our sadhana, also the happier we are going to be, and that's our ultimate picture.
Great point. Yeah, have you guys seen Radhanath Swami Maharaj chants? He's really going for it, he really does. And yeah, something to aspire to. I mean, to just we don't even have to aspire. We can go for it. We could just go for it ourselves now. I remember hearing in a class by Maharaj where he said he was on a flight and all of a sudden there was like this crazy turbulence and then it was like it took like a dive or something and like everybody on the plane thought like, okay, this is it, like we're all gonna die. And he put his hand in his bag, or maybe it was already in his bag, and he started chanting like as hard as he's ever chanted before, just begging, I don't know exactly what, but you could imagine. And he said, and then the flight like, leveled out and it was okay and everybody sighed relief. And then he said, well, I should chant like this all the time. This should always be my mood, that I could die at any time. And so let me chant like that.
Thank you, Anupama Prabhu. That reminded me of how Srila Prabhupada won the court case against Mr. Nair in Jew. He installed the deities before the deal was even finalized. He installed the deities. He set up full-time deity worship there, and that was it. It was sealed in that way.
Yeah, there's an old adage called says burn the ships. Burn the ships. It was mentioned, I believe, when they were conquering like the South America or something like that. And the leader of the conquistadors or whatever, after they got off the boats, then he instructed his men to burn the ships that they came on. In other words, that like this is it. We're not going to look back anymore. But he literally did it. And then he forced them all to get in this mentality of here we go. This is what we're doing now with our lives. We're going to take over this land. And so we could have a similar mentality with our spiritual life. We can kind of burn the ships, all the different things that we might feel like we could fall back on for comfort and safety, and just fully give ourselves to the holy name and to service to the spiritual master.
Chant like you're on a plane. Chant like you have no bridges behind you. No ships. Yeah,
Yeah.
burn the ship. Thank
the
you, Anupama Prabhu. Give class like that. Wash dishes like that. Everything you do it like that.
Yes. Quick advancement. That's fast path. Yeah. I was talking to Satyaraj and he said he realized that spiritual life, Krishna consciousness, is something where you get what you put into it at the end of the day. At the end of life, you'll look back and see, oh, I got what I put into it. And so if we do things like that, then we'll definitely notice a big difference as opposed to just doing things complacently.
Yeah, I'm about to start driving, so I'm gonna drive like there's no ships.
Yeah, drive very safely.
Yeah.
Because,
Darshan time. Darshan time. Turn your cameras on, dear devotees, if you can.
Sundarangam Khandapakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Haripurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Haripurusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Haripurusham Tamaham Bhajami Anyani Yasya Sakaven Priyavrittimanti Pasyanti pan Kalyanti Shirantaganti Anadachimaya Sadhu Bala Vigrahasya Govindam Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Hari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu, for facilitating our darshan. Anupama Prabhu, great class. Thank you very much. The court case, Ananda Manjari, was that Srila Prabhupada and his disciples, they were purchasing that piece of land in Juhu for the temple, and the scam was, the owner was gonna take the deposit from them, and then he would make the idea was to make the installments, the payments, very big, so that Prabhupada couldn't pay them, and then he thought he would get to keep the deposit. So that, and he had done that before several times with that piece of land, but then he messed with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada installed the deities, the worship started, and that was it. And then Krishna killed Mr. Nair. Krishna literally killed him. Krishna took him, and when the devotees told Prabhupada, they called him, said, Srila Prabhupada, Mr. Nair is dead. And Srila Prabhupada was, Jai Ho, Hare Krishna. And the devotees were, why? Isn't a Vaishnava supposed to be like upset about when somebody dies? Aren't we supposed to grieve? And Srila Prabhupada said, no, he was a demon. He was such a big demon. And I prayed to Krishna to kill him. I don't know where I'm going with this. It's just a story. It's you don't imitate that. That's our Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Don't imitate. Okay.
Ananda Bihari Prabhu, I was wondering before we leave if we could also just do a little commercial for the Bhakti Center community groups that are starting up soon. And we actually have our very own Venetia. I think it's the same Venetia because I don't know that there's many Venetias that have to do with the Bhakti Center. I think our very own Venetia is leading a group. It is you. Haribo, I saw that and I was so excited.
Oh, thank you, Damodar Pir. It's my first community class. Wow. Thank you for the advertisement. I'm very, very excited about it. Hare Krishna, excited for the service. Thank you for this wonderful class. Is the speaker still on?
I put the link in the chat if anybody wants to check it out, but you can also go to bhakticenter.org/community-group for anybody who's listening on YouTube. And we have groups starting soon, and it's a really great way to connect. And you can get to be in a group with Venetia, Prabhu. Yay!
What is it? bhakticenter.org/community groups. Yes, sign up. Is that free of charge?
Yes, the community groups are free.
Do they serve prasadam? Venetia, this is your chance. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah, that you're raising the bar here.
Well, there's a mixture of in-person and online. So I don't know how you would do prasadam for the online ones, but you'll definitely get mercy in terms of like association with devotees and getting to read about the Shastras, the sacred literature, and get to kind of talk about Krishna and glorify Krishna. So there's definitely prasadam in that way.
Nice. Venetia, we'll just have to figure out how to serve Zoom, and then she'll be ready to go.
Yeah, mine is in person, so now you've really raised the bar.
Oh, cool. Nice, Venetia. Okay, any other announcements? Dayal Garanga Prabhu is recovering steadily. His consciousness is appropriate. We're trying to give him love and support. Dayal Garanga Prabhu, if you're watching online, we'll love you. Please come back soon. He says, I want this to help me increase my service, he says. That's what I wanted to do, this accident. I want to increase my service. Isn't that wonderful? way to take a calamity. Okay, with this, we're wishing everyone to have a wonderful day. Give it to Krishna, burn the ships, and come again tomorrow. Let's chant in Nadi's ear. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.